Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Maybe we're getting some recognition from somewhere. My system here was working right up to the moment that the show started, and then apparently the music worked and Doug worked, fortunately, but I was totally cut off. So, of course, we always assume that everything happens with total random chance, right? But just in case anybody has a hand in that, we'll make a deal with you and we'll give you something valuable in this show if you'd like to let us stay on the air for a little while. The rest of you, I really appreciate being back with you again. And this is Church of the Essene Teacher that airs live, unscripted, except for a few bullet point notes of what I want to not forget to share with you. And wherever it goes, it goes. And this is a very unusual program. If you really want to know more about it, listen to the archives. They're all free online at lostartsradio.com or on blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio. You can get them all back to day one of the transmission. And actually, as the regular listeners know, the show started as a Sunday show and is still every Sunday evening, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, with guests that are incredibly educational people. And my idea with it was, well, actually, I never had the idea to do it at all. But when I was asked to start a show on health, I thought, all right, we'll have educational guests and we'll just talk to them, which we've done. And it's been great. I feel really fortunate. I've got a front row seat to talk to and meet all these amazing educational people that are experienced in relevant and varied areas pertaining to health and world events. And, really, I haven't found any subject yet that's not immediately connected to health in some way. Maybe there is one, but I don't know what it is. And so we've been talking to all kinds of people, and it's been great. But I was trying to avoid actually talking about my own work, the research for which started in 1965 in health and quickly got into health and consciousness on a deeper level. But apparently that wasn't supposed to be avoided, and the result of it turned out to be this show on Saturdays, which was added something like 6 months ago to the Sunday show. So now we still have the regular Sunday one with the great guests coming on at another really good one tomorrow that I'll tell you about. But now we've got this Church of the Essene Teacher show, which also, not only did I not intend to do it, I certainly didn't intend to call it a church show because I'm not religious, as everybody knows, and I'm deeply connected to one of the teachers, known as Jesus, and to many others as well, all of which at the higher levels have exactly the same teaching. And but to me, it's not religious at all, and so I didn't know, why am I supposed to call it a church? But that was the instruction, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just really here to convey information, but more than that, energy. And I was just thinking before the show, before we got cut off when I tried to start it tonight, that it really doesn't matter if this show goes 5 minutes or 3 hours on any given Saturday, because what I want for it, what I feel like it's supposed to do, it's for you, it's not for me. And it's definitely not about me. I mean, I just didn't even want to talk about my own experience in most of it, and I successfully avoided it for quite a while, and it's not being as possible now, but we're talking about general principles that the Essene Teacher and Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1, and all the others, and, you could say in the same tradition, but I say it's the same teacher. I mean, literally the same being, but that's another discussion that maybe we can have at some point, if you want to. The important thing is the energy that they were all trying to convey. And, people would argue over the words and make up theological arguments and who's right and wrong, and you have to hate the ones that are wrong and destroy them if possible. And a lot of these great teachers, who said the same message, they tended to get tortured and killed. And the reason, I don't think that was at random at all. It was because they were offering people direct access to something that didn't need any hierarchy or structure in the world to connect you to. And they were saying, hey, you have some abilities and some identity that you forgot, you're not really the limited being that you think you are. You can do the things that we do, and you can, and the reason is because in the end analysis, you're the same being. It's just you're not conscious, and those teachers are. And they're around now. I mean, they've always been around. And it's not just here. It's a much, much, much bigger picture. Nobody's allowed to be without that kind of connection when they're ready for it and they want it. And when they want it, it appears from somewhere. And it doesn't matter what country you're born in, what planet you're born on, all of which are inhabited, by the way. It's not like some desperate search to see if there's any other life in the universe. That does not prove that we're intelligent life to have that approach. Consciousness is absolutely everywhere, and just because it doesn't have a form that looks like what we think of as a human, I mean, this is like below preschool level of understanding. There's life everywhere. And so to me, those are just people in different forms or no forms or whatever, and they need the same connection back to the source, because really, however big things are, there's ultimately only one source that it all came from. And the whole game is to get connected back to that when you've had enough experience and you decide that's what you want. And then it's a step-by-step trip back from wherever you happen to be. And there's nowhere that you can be born in any of the physical universes, and there are many, or any of the higher dimensions where there's faster frequency, and it's just as real or more so to them there as we think this is to us. There's nowhere that you can show up that you're not known, remembered, watched, every thought that you have, and you get exactly what you need at each particular instant. So we've never really been disconnected in a way, because all of this outside thing is the quantum physics people say, but they're just on the outer edges of beginning to imagine what it might be. Hardly at all, but because it's, like they say, a holographic projection of consciousness, even if we don't really grasp what that means yet, the whole separation thing, which is probably the root of the worst pain of all the horrible pains that exist down here, is not real. I mean, it feels real. It might as well be, because we go through it. And, people being born and dying and getting cut to pieces and all kinds of interesting stuff that can happen on the physical level of projection that we're going through as a realistic dream right now. But it's not real. And the one being, which is the source, what these guys taught on a deeper level that most people couldn't grasp is that really is the only being that's ever existed, which includes us. And it made a decision. It didn't need a reason, because reason is a function of lower level experience, like down here. It just decided to experience itself in so many different forms. And again, I'm not asking you to agree with anything I say, okay? You can think I'm completely crazy and haven't memorized my scriptures properly or whatever you want to think, but I'm telling you something that you may not hear everywhere else. And it's just, even if you decide it's crazy and what you already think is right, that's great. It's just for the purpose of thinking and exploring, not necessarily agreeing. But I'm telling you that this one being, according to those teachings, is experiencing itself in all these different forms that are, almost infinite in so many different. This is a really big place. The universe is just one little piece of it. It's way, way beyond. So I guess what I'm saying is that Church of the Essene Teacher, which was supposed to happen as a show right now, and eventually a physical facility if the money shows up to make that possible, and I don't know if it will or not, but if it does, we have detailed plans now that we're also given to build this thing. But if it doesn't happen, we'll just do it on the air, and it's not to try to reach everybody, because it would just seem too strange to the vast majority of the world's population. But it doesn't matter, because if you're supposed to hear it, I'm absolutely positive that you will and are right now. And I'm supposed to be here because I tried not to be, and I am anyway. So, we're doing what we need to be doing. And it is for everybody in one sense, and that is that, as I'll talk about later, my ulterior motive, and probably the ulterior motive of the people behind it, is that we do something to avoid the total extermination, which is, in a very uncomfortable manner, by the way, which is what the global rulers intend to do. And all the single-issue groups that are looking at, GMOs or chemtrails or nuclear power or war or all these, they're looking at spokes of the wheel, of which there are many. I mean, there's at least 20 or 30 major ones, any of which is quite capable of ending life on this planet. And so one of the things, as long as I'm here for a few minutes, which is what it seems like, really brief period of time, that I'd just like to see less avoidable suffering of individuals on all levels, and avoiding and replacing the future that we're being pushed into right now. So anything that we can do to contribute to those things, I think, to me, that feels like a worthwhile thing to do that I would like to do. So it's not just to spend time talking here. It's not just to say, put out some information that everybody says, oh, that's really interesting, and then, nothing happens. It's really as more of a purpose than that. And it's just, if you happen to feel like being part of it, then part of the message is that you have vast power yourself. You're not the limited, helpless, dependent, low intelligence individual that you're supposed to believe you are. And that's part of the reason that all these teachers were killed, is they were reminding you, hey, you're not the slave that they're making you into. You're something incredible. And ultimately, you can't ever be permanently enslaved or permanently destroyed. You're not that limited. But it can feel like it, and it might as well be real. So, because it's really uncomfortable going through that kind of junk, and I know in detail from about 20 years of deep investigation of the economic and political power structure and what it's got in mind, I know, maybe more than you guys who are monitoring this show, what the plans are in detail, why, how, and when. And, the time is flexible depending on what happens as it goes, but I know it's not something we want, and it's really not something that any of you want who are working for it either, because what you've been promised is, sorry to bring this up to you, but it's not true. So, see, if you had knocked me off the air tonight completely, you wouldn't get to hear about that. But we are going to talk about it tonight, and you're going to have front row seats. And you can reject it, but I would just suggest that it doesn't cost you anything. You're still doing what you're paid to do by monitoring the show and being here. And you might as well listen and consider it, because your future is what we're talking about. It's kind of serious. And there's always a remote possibility that one of these crazy radio hosts that you're monitoring might tell you something that you could use. So, keep listening, and we're not going to have commercials. We're just going to talk. And I don't know whether it's going to be 10 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours or what. It's just going to be until we finish going over the basics that I made a few notes of that I wanted to share with you tonight. And then if any of you at that point want to talk or contribute a comment or say, this is terrible, or we disagree, or it's great, or whatever, it's fine. The show belongs to you. I'm just here as kind of a contributor sharing a little bit of information. So if you decide that you want to call in, the number, which I often forget to give, is 657-383-1002, 657-383-1002. And since the vast majority of our audience in all parts of the world listens to the archives, so they can't call in. Well, they can, but nobody will be there because it's the wrong time. If you don't, find it feasible to listen when we're live, like now, because this really is the live show, not like Sunday when we have to record guests at different times, you can send an email with anything that you want talked about to richard@lostartsradio.com, and we'll try to incorporate it into the show. I'd love to hear from you, and I understand if you are busy at the time that the show is live, that's fine. So anyway, it's the Church of the Essene Teacher, and it's not religious. I guess it's a church. I mean, I was told to call it that. But the focus is not on a dogma that we say, okay, this is right. Whatever you believe is wrong. You got to memorize. You got to say these catchphrases to be a member. Any of that stuff. It's nothing like that. What I'm interested in is conveying an energy and an atmosphere that will be the characteristic trademark of the school, even though when and if we build it on this plane of existence, it's already built on higher levels. But if we manage to bring it in physically, then even though we're going to teach incredible things that will revolutionize a lot of lives and hopefully the atmosphere of this planet, right now that's not happening because we don't have the money yet. So for the moment, what I figured I could do, if I'm allowed to, is share with you a little of the atmosphere that will be at that place now. So if you're able to tune into that, I would like you to feel it. And, ideas can be argued about and beliefs and say, oh, this teacher didn't really say that. He said this, and you guys are all going to hell because you're on the wrong track. And, the usual kill all the wrong guys in the religion business. But this is not about that. Energies and atmospheres and frequencies are not as subject to argument and conflict and everybody killing each other. There's something to experience, and they cut right through antagonism and animosity and enemies and the stuff that human minds usually gravitate to when they're not focused in a good way. So I'm going to tell you some words tonight, but they're not the main part. What's embedded in the words is the main part, and where they come, where that embedded energy comes from, is the main part. So just like everybody's really worried about cell towers right now and the 5G rollout and the really clever plans of the power structure to radiate everybody and control your thoughts and break into your mind. And this is what cell towers are about, okay? It's not wonderful equal access to more bandwidth. That's not really the whole picture. It's, can we control your thoughts? Can we mess up the physical level intercellular communication in your body, which works on a very delicate electrical current and can be interfered with by what they plan to transmit from the cell towers. Barry Trower talked about this with us several times on the show. Microwave weapons expert from the UK. You should listen to those if you're interested in this subject, because those were really informative archives, and they're all free. You can listen to them if you have time. But the point I'm making is that that's the power structure's idea of something really clever, right? To turn everybody into just completely suicidal zombies or worse. That reflects a reality that is much more powerful and much finer and not destructive. And it's part of one of your many normal abilities, which is receiving and transmitting very fine frequency energies. And you're doing that now, we all are, but it's scattered. And if you're not aware of it, if it's not conscious, then it's just going all over the place. And it's, one direction and then the opposite direction and one message and the opposite message, and it's a mess. So you have no power on that level when you're scattered. And part of the idea of the many agendas behind the real microwave rollout is to make sure you stay scattered and that your energies are never becoming coherent. Because if they do, and this is only known at the top levels, the bottom levels, not the bottom levels, but the middle and what we think are the upper levels of the power structure, they're just following orders, and a lot of them think they're serving their country, serving the world, being wonderful patriots, and working for health or some nonsense like that, when they're actually carrying out the orders of an extremely malevolent top-level cartel, which is in charge. And almost all of the problems that threaten the existence of not just mankind, but animals and plants and the whole biosphere, even the insects and the honeybees and all, the whole web of life, which is intricately interconnected. Most of what threatens that are problems that are man-made, but they're not the kind of man-made problems that you're supposed to feel guilty for, like from the Paris meeting or what the United Nations talks about, or when Obama went to Africa and said, you guys can't have air conditioning or cars because the planet will boil over. Those were his words. I listened to him say that. It's not like that. The problems threatening the environment and the health of humanity and the biosphere are engineered to do exactly that. They're supposed to do that. So we're interested in is the natural healing of that. It's just a health situation, right? Just on a little bit different level. If you fight the symptoms, which I'm not saying it's bad to fight. Sometimes you need to use natural remedies to get rid of a terrible headache that you can't stop, right? I mean, if you know about how to do that with colon hydrotherapy, then you're way beyond the people that use an herb in your understanding of the body. But the symptomatic relief of distress is not the cure of the disease. So while you have to deal with the symptoms like the nuclear power plants and the chemtrails and drug medicine and chemical fertilizers and all this stuff that are so destructive, dealing with those is going to take too long to cure the disease at the stage that it's at now. So while I'm trying to bring for you and share with you so that I can be of some use to you for spending time to listen to this show when you could be doing a million other things, I got to share with you, I thought, well, what's the most valuable? It's the atmosphere of stillness, harmony, real love and peace and nature and consciousness. This consciousness in its essence is all those things. And what will be at the school without you having to wait or physically go there? I don't know what better thing I could give you. It's what I would like. So, if I get to be a conduit for that, any of that at all. No, I'm not saying I can. That's what I want to do. It depends. If you can feel that, and if I can not be in the way, then that's really good. Even if the show's 5 minutes long and I don't say anything, the purpose is served. Because the reason that the purpose is served is that that energy, if it's real, and if it's perceived consciously, actually, even if it's not perceived consciously, even if it hits the subconscious, it becomes a seed. The ideas are entirely secondary. It's the self-awareness. And that changes all the ideas. And it changes the emotions. And it changes the distress into relaxation. But it's not like the kind of relaxation where you kind of zone out and go to sleep. It's the opposite. It's the kind of much deeper relaxation, not like hypnosis, but like super awareness. And you can't have that without being really deeply relaxed. So the principle of just how to relax, that's a really high concept. And I don't mean, a person who believes one thing is better than another. I'm not so far away from that kind of idea. I'm talking about this is something that helps you a lot. And, even on the martial arts level, which I spent a long time in, the greatest martial artists are totally, totally relaxed. They're lightning fast because they have no tension and they have total focus. But they're just on a beginning level. Even the really great ones, it goes way beyond that. So anyway, that frequency that I'm inadequately trying to describe, not very well, is really the core concept of the school. But for now, we're just going to try to do it electronically. And as I say, that it's not the words. I have to use words because I don't know what else to use, but it's the energy quality. So I hope to get to where you have some direct feeling of that, as if you're the only person listening to this show, and I'm just talking to you, which actually is true. So the purpose of the show, we'll get back to the word level here, so that you don't have dead air to listen to. And who knows, I might say something of some use. Anyway, the purpose is educational. The use of natural laws, I mean, to use them, you have to know what they are, first of all. So we go into that. And there's some discussion of them in the book 1 of the Essene Gospel of Peace. Those laws are like, you don't have to call them laws, you could call them principles, design principles of nature. They're not like a law to get punished for, okay? They're like a blueprint. They're a principle of construction of the three-dimensional level of existence. And they've been there since the beginning, and they don't change. But the application of them can change, because history goes in cycles and changes, and our bodies change, and obviously the environment changes. I mean, it hasn't been this toxic any time that I know of in the past. So how you implement the natural laws does change. And it's for health, not just physical health, but you find out very quickly that it's tied together with health on mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. And by spiritual, I don't mean what you memorize that you believe. I mean the reconnection to your source on an experiential level, regardless of what language you put that into. You know, what you really want from a belief system is to experience it, not by just having to rev up your own belief, but by having the source that you believe in take care of it for you. And ultimately, like we've been saying, I would, if I'm going to be here, you know, trying to share any of this with you, then what I'd like is for you to have an experience more and more and more, not just one time, of reconnecting to the presence that has been with you the whole time. If you can feel that presence with you from now on, it makes the experience in a very difficult environment much better. It changes what you want, it changes what you care about, changes what you experience, and it makes things like dealing with your physical body and other people way easier. You know, when the less we have that connection, the more we get upset about what happens here. And I'm not saying you stop caring. I'm saying you stop getting knocked off balance so much. So anyway, looking at the physical applications of all this stuff a little bit. This week, I've been talking to some people about various diseases. You know, I put that in quotes because I kind of believe, I agree with Dr. Morse in a way in Florida that's saying that diseases are an arbitrary concept, and it's just the desire of the medical system to put names on things so that they can diagnose and treat them, neither of which we do on this radio show, okay? So really important when we get to that subject to say, because it's highly regulated in this country and elsewhere by the drug industry, the government agencies, and the medical industry. And they don't have to worry about us because I have no interest in giving any medical advice to anybody or having anything to do with the medical world other than to say, if you want medical advice or want drugs, toxic chemicals called medicines, or you want operations and radiation and chemotherapy and all that stuff, organs removed, whatever you need, please go to your doctor instantly, and they'll be happy to give you all those things and tell you all the diseases you have, get you on drugs for life, and everything will be great. So we're not trying to interfere with that. But we're just talking about a really different understanding of the whole thing. It's like these things called diseases. They're sets of symptoms, okay, that can be measured, like in tests, medical tests of different kinds, or observations of the body or the behavior of the person. And the medical industry as it exists now focuses on attacking the symptoms or the syndromes, or, you know, the things that describe the condition of the person based on what they call an understanding of the physiology, the biochemistry, all the reactions that are going on in the body. And the problem with that, there's some problems with that approach. And I'm sure you guys understand this completely anyway, but I'm just going to quickly review a little bit, because you never know when you can have to deal with this yourself. And when you deal with symptoms and you think you understand all the biochemistry and the chemical reactions, all this stuff, the problem is that when you go deeper into what's going on in the body, it's got levels, like peeling an onion. So it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And every time science gets what amounts to a more powerful microscope, in any sense, including a more powerful theory or medical test or observational protocol or anything like that, then it says, oh, well, what we thought was the explanation and what's happening in the treatment and everything before, sorry about that. That was totally wrong and you know, might kill you. But this new one is for sure the best one ever. And, you know, maybe it is, but then it gets proven wrong later. And the reason that happens over and over and over and over again in science is because they're trying to understand all of the details of these minute reactions in order to come up with a grasp of how the whole system works. And according to this other point of view that I'm sharing with you, you can't do that. Oh, well, you can do it, but you can't do it and be right, because you're seeing almost none of what's really going on. And so you come up with totally insane treatments for conditions such as eating toxic chemicals in order to get healthy, because they do a test and they say, oh, well, this particular toxic chemical, it stopped this symptom, at least for a while. Yeah, it caused all these other things that, you know, destroys your liver and your kidneys and your heart and your brain and everything, and it may kill you. But it stops this symptom for a while. So it's really great medicine. This kind of total insanity comes from, and often really well-meaning, only the people at the top understand how destructive it is. And it comes from an approach that is pretty much doomed to failure, because the extent of the complexity of the life mechanisms that are going on in the body is so almost endless that you can't get a complete grasp on it that way. However, there's a good alternative, because if you do learn the principles that are driving that almost infinite complexity, then that leads you into a way of harmonizing with the body's own built-in healing system, which is almost infinitely better than anything any person or doctor or medical person could do. It's not saying that lives are not saved by emergency medicine, because they are. And trauma care and putting people back together after accidents and stuff, that's vital and it's really great. But healing, whether it's after an accident or from a disease or anything else, as far as I've seen, there's no doctor that can do that. But so then you get into what does heal it? Because if you cut your finger, it heals. And a doctor didn't make it heal. I mean, a doctor might tell you to put some chemical on it, or iodine, or some antiseptic, or, you know, if they're really wise, maybe silver or something helpful, or some vitamin E oil or aloe vera or something good. None of which I'm giving is medical advice. Don't worry about that, you guys. But even if they put aloe vera, the best thing on it, they don't heal the cut. So who's doing that? Every cut you've ever had that's healed is healed by the same source. That would be good to find out about. You know, you find out about that, and it's beyond 100 years of medical school, by far. So the life force in the body is the healer. It's always striving toward harmony, healing, high energy. It even affects your mind and your emotions and everything. It's trying to keep you in the high energy state, which is your normal state, beyond what any drug could touch, natural or otherwise. This is why I have no interest in stuff like marijuana or ayahuasca or anything. They're nothing compared to your normal state. And yeah, people have used them for benefit. And like I talked about, recently with marijuana, it does dull your senses and it dulls your consciousness. So if you have terrible pain and you don't really understand what to do to get rid of it, this can make you not care about it and not feel it as much, which can be really important. And it can calm down the nervous system when it has seizures, or somebody that's prone to violence and really bad behavior and flying into rages and stuff. Marijuana can actually make them not care anymore, so they don't hurt anybody. And so it's got applications, but compared to actually finding out how to get in touch with what is not programmed, but what can I say? The energy that enlivens your body and that built it inside your mother before you were born, that's better than taking anything, as far as a substance goes. And so the old teaching, and I don't just mean the Essene Gospel of Peace, these ideas were ancient when that was happening. When Jesus was walking around, these things were ancient already. So he was just reiterating them. And every great teacher was as well, back to the beginning. And any of the real ones, including him or anybody who was the same being, it's the only teacher, but it appears in all these different forms, and then everybody argues about, well, this is the right one, and, your teacher is not as good as our teacher. I mean, this is like preschool level. That teacher is actually the same as the source that it came from, but that's jumping ahead a little bit. What I wanted to say is that the old teaching from the beginning is how to support and allow the life force to heal your body and your mind and your emotions and everything. And one of the simplest ways that they used, certainly in the Essene Gospel, but before that too, was fasting. And on water, they just said, go and find a nice place near a river and hopefully comfortable situation, and get a hollowed out gourd you can use for enemas, because it's not safe to do fasting without that, in most of their opinions. And I concur with that after doing it for many decades. They all said to do that. So why did they say to do that? Well, the energy of the body that is keeping you alive in the body is busy doing all this work to try to digest and assimilate and eliminate food that you're eating, and it's doing that 24 hours a day, and that's a lot of work. And it has to do that before the detox work, and the detox work means all the time since before you were born, when you took in any kind of toxic material or garbage material from food that was destroyed either by processing or heat or whatever, radiation, and it just leaves this residue. And the body knows it's dangerous to have that dead material floating around. Even the non-toxic dead material shouldn't be in the body. And so if it doesn't have the energy to get rid of it, and it's busy with processing new food, it walls it off where it tries to keep it as safe as possible, where it can't do any damage. So it walls off concentrated deposits of it in different cells all over the body, trillions of cells. And it knows where every one of those deposits are. The body is self-aware and conscious. This is totally not agreed to by modern medical science. The statement has not been evaluated by the FDA, in case you'd like to hear me say that. But this is what these old guys have taught. Not old guys, but people in all these different ages. And the body remembers where those things are. And it knows that if it ever gets a break from all this energy dealing with food, it will go back and eliminate those wastes and short-circuit the process to degeneration and disease and so-called aging and destruction of the body. It's really important, but it's just got to deal with the food first, or else it would be a disaster. So if you stop with the food, then the body says, oh, finally, I'll go back to dealing with getting rid of these poisons so disasters don't happen with them sitting there. And that's what goes on when you fast. But right now we're so toxic. Most of the great health teachers and, some of them that we've had on the show have all said that water fasting, at least long water fasting, can be dangerous when you're incredibly toxic. Some people don't say that. I mean, Lauren Lockman has a very successful fasting place in Costa Rica called Tanglewood. They've got hundreds of videos on on YouTube that you can see for free. Really interesting. And it's worthwhile, I think, to go to Tanglewood or Lauren Lockman on YouTube and see the great cures. I mean, I know you're not supposed to believe in cures anymore. It's all management and permanent drug addiction for your benefit. But he would say cures, and rightfully so. But some of the people have had bad experiences there because it can be too hard on the system. I've talked to some of those people, and I guess it's not supposed to be known for advertising purposes, but it's true. And so to make it easier, some people have done juice fasting, where you get a slow-speed juicer like an Omega or something, and with a horizontal shaft that turns pretty slow. And you juice fresh vegetables, and then you drink them right away. Strain out all the solid. That was the basis of the Bruce cancer cure and a lot of other famous approaches to cure of various diseases, and it has worked really well. It saved a lot of lives, even though you're not supposed to know about that either. And that provides some nutrition, although it doesn't take much digestion at all. And Marcus Rothkranz, who was the first guest we ever had on our show, is saying that, well, he would try, in most cases, a little bit of water fasting, like for a few days, and then go on to juice and stay on juice for as long as possible, and then go on to raw food. And that was the kind of the sequence that he would use himself, or what he would say, other people should consider, not as a medical advice or anything, but just in harmony with this old teaching. And that way the body's given an opportunity to get rid of the foundation of future disease or what's causing the current one. And I've worked a lot with that over a long time. I guess the first fasting I tried was probably 1967 or so. And, I was just learning the basics about what processed foods not to eat, and started playing with not eating meat about 1970, and back and forth with a lot of experiments up through the decades after that. But there's no doubt that all these great health teachers have talked about the benefits of fasting, and in recent times, Norman Walker and other really great teachers have brought up the juice fasting protocol, and they've saved a lot of lives. It's just amazing. Even some that have been damaged by horrific medical treatments, which are usually what kill these people, if they've survived that, sometimes the juice fasting has even saved those people. Even if I had too much damage done to my body and I was not going to survive in this body, I would do juice fasting anyway, just because it would make it more comfortable to end my life that way than be constantly putting in more poisons. See, the body doesn't care if you call them medicines. If they're poisons, they're poisons. And it doesn't like that. And, if you can do something positive instead, I would rather end my life that way than, the usual way, which is so horrible that you have to be drugged out of your mind in what's called hospice, and that, what do they call that? Palliative care. It just means drugging you so that you can't feel how horrible what they're doing to you is making things go. I'd rather do it the other way. But, of course, it's a total individual decision. And I think your own health care should be in your hands. And if you use a doctor or a medical person, they're your employee or your contractor. They work for you, not vice versa. and they don't get to order you what to do. And they certainly shouldn't be ordering people what to do to their kids. I mean, that's just almost unbelievable, but that is happening, and government and the medical industry is kidnapping people's children when they don't give them enough injections of poisons, vaccines they're called, or chemotherapy, which is amazing that kind of crime is going on, but it is. And if you're going to live in this particular environment as it is now, you either educate yourself about this stuff and, so that you have reasonable strategies, or if you don't, if it's too uncomfortable to think about, then you get blindsided and you have the results of that. And I personally would rather be informed, but again, it's an individual decision. Anyway, what Marcus does is water fasting followed by juice fasting followed by 100% fresh raw food. Where I divert a little bit from what he teaches is that in the rebuilding phase after the detox, I would add raw milk, because I was a raw vegan for a long time and I had the same negative results that most long-term strict raw vegans have. They get so emaciated, and if they can't see what's going on, they think, wow, this is wonderful, I'm getting super high energy, and they're losing all their muscle tissue. And the heart is a muscle, by the way, so you don't want to lose that muscle tissue, and it's not good at all. And most of them go back to cooked food, and they might tell themselves, well, the energy was just so spectacular, I had to eat a little cooked food to dull it down a little bit. That's not what's going on. They were really endangering their body. And the problem is, if they kind of smooth that out with some cooked food, they go back to a lower energy vibration than they were getting on the raw food. And I was dealing with that same dilemma, and it seemed like there was no way out of it, because we all knew that anything from animals was totally evil, that you could never even think about doing that. And I totally agreed with the vegans that I didn't want to abuse animals. That kind of comes naturally, by the way, when you get to a certain consciousness and it just strikes you one day that a cow or a pig or a fish or a bird or these other animals, they're not really that different than your pet dog or cat. Does it really feel good to cause them pain and death? Or is it just silly to even think about, like the Weston Price people have told me, that it's a non-issue? And when you become a little bit conscious, it's not a non-issue. And it's uncomfortable to take responsibility and be aware of what you're doing, but it helps you if you can do it. But I realized, though I was conscious of that I needed saturated fat and cholesterol, and the government certainly agreed with me because they said those things would kill you, so they must be really superfoods. Your brain is made out of mostly cholesterol, the solid part, and your nerve sheaths are made out of it, and your cell walls have a lot of it, and it's used in emergencies to patch blood vessels by your body. That's why the doctors think that, the cholesterol is causing blocked arteries and stuff, that they're missing what's going on. It's the body's attempt to patch other damage. Cholesterol saving your life. So I knew that, the best source was animals, but I would rather starve to death whatever happened from a lack of cholesterol than hurt the animals anymore. That was no longer an option. It wasn't a belief, it was an experience. And then I found raw milk, and I realized that what the vegans say about milk has nothing to do with real milk at all. It's all from these abused animals that are being fed chemicalized food, forced to produce way more than they normally would. One of the dairy farmers told me, that's ridiculous. Why would we ever abuse our own animals? They're the source of our income. No, they would. And the reason they would is because the animals are expendable. If they can produce a whole lot of milk for a short period, all they do is sell them for food after that and kill them. And it's quite economically profitable. So, no, you're wrong. They would abuse their animals, and almost all of them do. The old model of dairy, which, as far as I've been able to find out, is not practiced on this planet anywhere. I mean, I've called Hindu temples all over the world. because at the time Krishna was walking around, and before that, people had this deep respect and understanding for the emotional consciousness of animals, and they would not cause them pain, but they used milk. It was used in the Essene gospel, and it was used way, before that. It's a superfood. That's why the government says never eat it. And the effects of it are not even related to the effects of this pasteurized, poisonous garbage that they call milk now. I would never recommend eating that to anybody, and I wouldn't touch it. I used to before I knew better, a long time ago. But I agree with the vegans. It's very, very destructive. And it's not, to me, once I started finding out the damaging qualities of these various so-called foods, it was like I said, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You let me taste something I like for a minute, and then it does all this damage in my body, messes up my thinking, damages my brain, and distracts me from everything I'm trying to do. And that's the deal you're giving me every day? I think from now on you can keep it. And this changed my motive for eating. And I don't eat for that anymore. I mean, I still want to feel good. Everybody wants to be happy and to feel good. But I realized I was approaching food like a drug addict, and it wasn't giving me any kind of lasting satisfaction at all. And it was giving me a lot of junk that I didn't want. And I just said, really appreciate your offer, but I permanently decline. And I did after that. So I had to find some other sources of feeling exhilarated, which, we can talk about because I think that's important. But it's no longer the same. And it's kind of an interesting learning process. So, anyway, I guess what I'm saying here is that the old teaching is all about how to allow and support the natural energy flow in the body. And even when you do it in the best way, there's no guarantee of exactly what the outcome is because a lot of factors are involved. But my personal preference, after a lot of trial and error, emphasis on error, I did so many things wrong for as long as I could before I finally realized what was obvious. And I guess the reason I have a few things to share is just I made more mistakes than a lot of people might make, and I was more of a really slow learner and a very dumb student. And when I was forced to finally realize what I was learning, it kind of sank in. Even though I read a lot of books, it wasn't from reading the books, it was from experience. And at this point, I'd always prefer the non-invasive, natural, non-toxic approach whenever possible. And I'm not telling you what to do. Okay, hopefully you get that now. And what makes a big difference, too, is to realize if you're wanting to apply any of this stuff, that it goes way beyond the physical level, and you need the support to make it really smooth and to get rid of this nonsense of doing things by willpower and stuff, which ultimately doesn't work. You need the further support of working with the mind, which includes both mental and emotional programming, as you may know if you've been listening for a little while. And so you need to redo your relationship with mind, which is actually like your child, but we'll go into that. And the body communication. Your body has been trying to communicate with you since before you were born, and most of us have ignored it from, the whole time. And we could be getting information from the body that science would say is totally ridiculous, superstition, total nonsense, on and on. But the only thing is, it's real. And no medical test could even come close. But you need a certain level of consciousness to pick it up and to interpret it correctly. You can also communicate to the body, which is self-aware and conscious, like the mind is. These are your two kids that you've abandoned, and I recommend repairing those two relationships, and you watch what happens. It's rather amazing. So when you're communicating to the body, you can even use this Ho'oponopono thing that we've been talking about between you and the body. I've seen it. I've used it. I've seen healing happen that was refusing to get better. And it happened just from that communication. I mean, this sounds like silly, superficial, imaginary stuff, except for it's not. And I'm willing to sound silly to share it with you because I've seen it work. And I recommend you incorporate that in your own healing program if you're interested in these things, because I have a ulterior motive for getting you in really super good condition, because there's some work that we have to do after that. But each person has to decide and direct and explore their own health care. It's not up to me. It's not up to anybody else as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's up to any kind of doctors or officials or government bureaucrats or anybody to tell you what you should do for your own health. That's yours. The body is yours, not theirs. And it's part of your unalienable freedoms is to do with your body what you want. Now, people always immediately bring up the question of abortion, and I don't want to get in fights with anybody, but I have to tell you the truth. The unborn baby is not your body. It's in your body, but you have to be clear and accurate. It's not your body. It's that person's body. And I remember coming through birth and death, and when you're being developed inside your mother, you're there. It's not her, it's you. Okay? So even when you're a really small embryo, it's you, or it would never start to develop. This is not a religious issue to me at all. Religion is something you memorize and then you fight people who disagree. This is an experiential issue, that because you're there, and if you weren't there, the genes wouldn't line up, the cells wouldn't line up, nothing would happen. Your mother would have her period. But because you're there, it's you and her, and she's got this sacred responsibility to take care of you and not kill you. So to make believe it's like cutting your fingernails, this is not very deep perception. But, again, it's not up to me, and it's not up to government, because government is so corrupt and so criminal. For them to tell women what they can do or any of us what we can do with our lives is kind of ironic, because they've been responsible for millions and hundreds of millions of deaths all over the world. So they're not a very good moral model for us. I'm just sharing information with you to consider that for pregnant women, the baby is not their body, it's the baby, whether it's breathing oxygen from the air or from the blood. And for me, I would say, for men too, if you don't want to be responsible for taking care of a child for their whole, as much of their life as they need it, don't have sex with the person if you're not ready to take care of a child. Sorry, but that's this basic responsibility and logic. But the natural tendency of life force, whether it's developing a child or developing the healing in your own body, is always toward healing, harmony, super high energy, a naturally happy state. There's no substances required. There's no reason it should take ayahuasca or marijuana or LSD. Those things are a joke compared to your real state. And they all have downsides. They're destabilizing. I've seen people who have gotten great spiritual insights that are real with LSD. And they meet beings that they couldn't see otherwise, and all this incredible stuff, but they skip steps. I'm probably not explaining it well, but it's the only way I know to say it. They skip steps that you could be dealing with now, and then in the end, they got to come all the way back, and it looks like the knowledge that they gained is lost temporarily, and they got to deal with usually humiliating kinds of circumstances where they're really blowing it in the mundane details of their life, and learn the lessons they skipped with the drug, and then start again. So, and it also, your brain chemistry, is really delicate. You don't need to be a brain expert to know that. It's true. And if you're not sure, the brain experts will tell you it is true. And anything you put into your bloodstream has an effect on your brain. And it's just, I don't think it's a very good idea to play with that. Whether you can say it's with a natural substance or a chemical substance, doesn't feel like a good idea to me. But it's up to you. Whatever you want to do, it's your body. And I don't think it should be illegal to, I mean, unless, you don't want to do things to other people, but what you decide to do to yourself is pretty much totally up to you. So, that natural energy that's keeping you alive and letting you listen to this show this minute is working for harmony in your body all the time. On a larger level, it's even working for harmony in your life situations. And if we're not experiencing that, what it's trying to give us, it's us who's blocking it in some way. And you have to figure out what that is. So one of the first steps is taking total responsibility for whatever you're experiencing. And the funny thing about that is, people resist it, and like in the Ho'oponopono thing, they say, oh, what those people are doing is not my fault. In fact, nothing's my fault. My circumstances are not my fault. It's bad luck and all this stuff. You can resist it as long as you feel like it. There's total freedom to live the way you want. But when you finally get to the point of saying, wait a minute, what would happen if I did take responsibility for everything I experience? The secret that Dr. Len was talking about is that leads to freedom. But not just freedom. It leads to this massive healing power that starts flowing through you, and you get to share it with people, even if they don't know anything about it or never become aware of it. You get to help them. And it all comes from taking total responsibility. It's counterintuitive, and it seems inconvenient and irritating at first, but it's the opposite. So, my personal motive for sharing any of this information is just to try to give you the tools. If 90% of the people who hear what I'm saying say, this is ridiculous, and this guy's out of his mind and stupid and a Russian agent or whatever they would say, and I've already been called a lot of things and say I hate women and the environment and everybody else, and I know who knows what else. If 1% of the people listening can say, wow, these are tools that could make my life better in a lot of ways. I don't even know what the potential is, but I'm going to find out. If it can reduce any avoidable suffering, my personal preference is I think that would be really good. I'd like to see that. And the second purpose, that being the first one, but the second purpose is that once you do that, what I've seen can be done with really understanding and applying the deeper aspects of these principles, starting wherever you are, is that if you get rid of your health issues to the greatest degree that you can, then you can much more easily do the real work, which starts on the inner levels. That's so powerful that I think collectively we could change the world's future and reverse the planned destruction and extermination that my research has said is the plan, and they're well along the way. They're not trying to make the weather better with chemtrails or feed the world with GMOs or give people clean power with nuclear energy or develop better species by cloning. No, this is all elements of a step-by-step planned extinction for everybody. They're not even going to leave some of the elite. It's extinction 100%. From what I've found out, it's not population reduction. The Georgia Guidestones are a partial step. The end goal is complete death and destruction. And the people at the very top don't tell that to their immediate lower-level servants. They say, oh, yeah, we're going to keep a remnant of people to enjoy the earth. It's going to be our playground. You're going to get a special handshake and membership card, and we've got the vaults with the organic seeds. We have all the antidotes for the poisoning of the air and water and soil. Don't worry, it's going to be great. And that's not true. All of you who are listening to this, who are monitors for this kind of show, who are working within the power structure, I'm hoping that we get some chemtrail pilots in our audience and people in higher levels of corporations and governments, and what you're being told is not true. You're being used as a tool to accomplish something that the very top level, which is highly confused, and they believe that by killing everybody in a successful ritual sacrifice to a very dark power that they worship, that they're going to get credit for doing it right, and that they're going to merge into cyberspace and become immortal. And the old merge into cyberspace and become immortal ploy, I guess you'd call it, if you're kind of sarcastic about it. But they really believe it, and I don't want to fight them. I don't want to damage them. I don't want to kill them. I don't want to engage in any kind of action against them. I would like to wake them up and heal them, and I think that's our real challenge. That's pretty much deeper idea than perpetual war against so-called bad guys. Everybody who's fighting thinks they're killing bad guys, right? Both sides in every war. I think there's another way, and the answer here is not like 1776. It's a step up, and it's a bigger challenge. You don't get to fulfill your destiny by just shooting people this time. You have to do something much, much more challenging. And if you go through it, it's going to help you a lot more than just shooting the bad guys. So, as they said on television, if you accept this mission, what was that? Mission Impossible or something, I guess. The target patient that I would like you to heal, after yourself, of course, is the Earth's energy field. We're going to start talking about this more openly. There's really no point in hiding. If they're going to knock us off the air, then they're going to do it. But I recommend that you don't do that to us, guys, because I'm not looking at you as enemies. I'm not looking at anybody as an enemy at all. I think that's a really low-level waste of our time, and we have other work to do. So, as I said, if you accept the mission and you're willing to start by this massive work on yourself, your health issues are the first step, and then it goes very quickly further into the mind. And if you do, then our patient is the Earth's energy field and atmosphere, because there's an atmosphere around the Earth that's not just oxygen, nitrogen, CO2, and things like that. It's energy. It's pure energy. And it's programmable energy. And right now, this is the energy that the negative power structure is terraforming at the highest levels. They understand the same thing I'm talking about. And they are changing the energetic atmosphere of the planet so it's conducive to death and destruction and all kinds of horrible things that they're doing, which we don't need to go into great detail about, but we know that it's actually happening. So the practice is on yourself and your immediate environment, which is going to quickly become involved and affected by what you're doing. But your small, in quotes, practice, what some of you have called homework, it's not small. And so you think about it, what does small mean? Compared to what? What is small in a holographic projection? Even in a physical, solid world where there's nothing else, compared to a grain of sand or an atom, your body is as big as a mountain range, right? And yet the same body that you have, that you're living in right now, that some people think they are, but they're actually living in temporarily, that same body is tiny like an atom when it's compared to the whole galaxy. And the galaxy is tiny compared to the larger region of the universe, and this is only one of the universes. And that physical level is only an atom size compared to the higher frequency places. And yet on the other side, if you got a powerful enough microscope or way to look inside, a single atom has whole universes of complexity inside it. So size is completely relative. Starting small in your healing experiments, it's just psychologically easier. So start on your own body. And again, please go to your doctor for medical advice. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the study of some ancient ideas that we're sharing here. So you noticed I said your body, not you, in the size comparisons, right? Did you notice that? So I talked about what size your body is, but what size are you? How would you answer that? I think you're unlimited because you're not physical, so you're beyond size. And other than by intent to experience yourself as this particular body right now and feel identified with a form, whether it's a body, a planet, an atom, really hear what I'm saying here. All these are forms. They exist because there's consciousness animating them. The idea of inanimate objects is highly questionable, to say the least. And that means we look at something like the planet we're walking on and say, wow, the Earth is alive. And this has been talked about by the old indigenous cultures, way back before recorded history. And we're supposed to think it's all superstition. Now we have three-stage rockets and synthetic shoes and all kinds of really wonderful stuff to show how wise we are. And those guys just walked around barefoot, dealing with nature. But the reality is they were not idiots, and they were not as out of touch as we are. And the Earth is alive. And the Earth does have a female energy to it, just like the sun has the counterpart in male energy. It's talked about in the Essene Gospel really beautifully. It's not some evil anti-God type thing like that. I mean, the religious rulers want you to think any new idea that you're not already knowledgeable about to understand must be evil. They call it occult, right? And it's got this dark, it must be the devil. That's total nonsense. The whole structure is so beautifully complex. Yeah, there are negative beings in it. There are demonic beings and forces all over the place. But the way that the Earth is designed and the sun and all the parts of the universe and everything, it's just in beautiful harmony. And the Earth is really a live, self-conscious, aware being that deserves respect and with whom you can actually communicate. But it doesn't mean, and this gets a little bit subtle, that the UN and all these criminal organizations aren't doing a completely criminal scam, which they are. And they've just got so many millions of people falling for it that are working for them, that are saying, oh yeah, Mother Earth is alive and everything, so you have to give up all your rights, all your property, turn off all your air conditioners and all this stuff. And the idea of austerity being good for the Earth is really ironic, because there's been free, clean energy available in recent times for at least 100 years. Dr. Stephen Greer has talked about it in detail. We don't need to be burning petroleum. So for the rulers that are hiding the real energy sources, just like they're hiding the real information on health, for them to say, like Obama told the Africans, that you can't have air conditioning or a car, that's just the cat playing with the mouse, really criminal malice. There's no reason to cut down your energy consumption. There's a reason to get rid of the bad energy sources and get the real ones. And the only way that's going to be solved is to change the actions of the people in control right now. And it gets right back to what I was getting at, because at this point, they're really well prepared against assault by force. They hope that we'll try to overcome them by force when they get desperate. And that would be a mistake, because they want that as an excuse to use weapons we haven't seen yet and wipe out humanity in the name of peace and security and law and order and all that. I think the only way that's open still is via consciousness, and the only way you can get back the ability to do that is starting on yourself. It's right back to what we were saying. So this stuff about, the power structure saying, to save the Earth, which is a living being, you have to give up all your rights and privacy and be surveilled and pay carbon taxes. This is all criminal activity. But the weird thing about it is the idea that the Earth is alive is true, but not on the level that they're talking about. So, it's not really at odds with the idea that the Earth is alive, with what all the great historical teachers have said. But why have the rulers not wanted us to know it in the real sense and what it really means? And if you don't know that, just think of what would happen if the population became aware of all these things. If we knew that our source was everything and everything was conscious, and that your consciousness was working around the clock to teach you, which it is, by even affecting your experiences in the real world, so that we would know that no one gets away with anything. You can't hide anything you ever do. You can't even hide a single thought. It's like, except for the very low unconscious state that we're in now, it's like these things are broadcast across the sky. They're skywritten by the old skywriting jets that used to do that. Sometimes the chemtrail pilots playing jokes do it with tic-tac-toe boards and stuff, but it's like that all the time. And if the public became aware that nobody gets away with anything, that everybody's actions fall immediately into this action-reaction, very delicate system, and it always works, and that you can't hurt anybody without hurting yourself. And if you do things nice for other people, you're doing them for yourself. Self-defense is still okay as long as it's not done with hatred, and there's no harm if the mentality is not ruined. But nothing is hidden, and all of your thoughts are seen, and we're never alone. We're always surrounded by beings that are actually trying to help us, and the only reason we get surrounded by nasty ones is if we open ourselves up to that, and there's ways to eliminate that so that they don't want to be around us. And that's pretty valuable stuff to do. So if we knew that, the rulers couldn't keep us hypnotized, and we'd very quickly become much more powerful than they are. And they know that too, because there's a fail-safe rule that we've mentioned before in how consciousness works, and that is that as long as you have any malice for anybody, you're going to be held to a very, very low level of power yourself. And if we're looking up at those guys in the negative power structure, it looks like they're really impressive and they have this vast dark power and everything. But compared to the real energy of the life force, what the negative power structure has is not even visible. It's nothing. The only way they can seem impressive is for us to lack self-awareness. If we ever get that back, then they're just, way, way, way down below us, and they can't do anything. So, talking to those guys, they're also victims of their own mind patterns, thinking that this is going to be really great, that they're going to be able to dominate the world and kill all the unnecessary people, and it's going to be fantastic. They're not aware, most of them, that they're all slated for termination as well, because the idea is not to leave an elite on the planet. The idea is for them all to be gone. It's not something that you really want to work for. And in order to get beyond it, once you fall into the negative power structure and it looks impossible to get out, it's not impossible to get out. I'm telling you that for sure. But you can't force your way out. You're going to have to deal with your own mind, and the mind has been given the programs that are really nasty to, do all this damage and kill people and murder and lie and cheat and steal and rape and all this stuff. And you're going to have to repair the relationship with mind, your own mind. And we're talking about how to do that. If you don't do it, you're probably not getting out of the program. And you don't want to go where it's going to take you. Because once you get into helping with the, destructive agenda, then you're responsible for that. And you don't want the results. So once you deal with the mind and you deal with the programming, and I promise I'll shut up in a minute. I've just got a few other things to go over. And when I do, if anybody wants to talk, the number is 657-383-1002. If not, fine. We'll just wrap the show up. It doesn't matter. But if you feel like it, and you happen to be listening live, you're welcome to call 657-383-1002. But what I was going to say to the people I hope will start listening to us, not just to shut us down or give us little problems electronically or anything, but actually be here, because I consider you friends that are not really aware of the real situation. And I want to give you useful information that will help you if possible. I'm not seeing I can't think of anybody that's an enemy. They're just playing the role of enemies, but that's not real. And you have the ability to get something much better. I'm saying that even the worst of the criminals, at the highest levels where they're, doing satanic worship and kidnapping kids and killing them and drinking their blood and worse, and a lot of horrible stuff that really is happening. It's one of the reasons they want to kill Donald Trump, is because he's exposing this and has arrested thousands of these people at high levels in government, but they're not talking about it. Anyway, in spite of that, even those people, I'm saying the radical idea that you guys, even if you're doing that, who you really were was always the essence of beauty and joy, and it's the same as the person that you think is great, but much, much more. And you still are that. You just don't remember at the moment. That's changeable. And this is the biggest taboo of information that I know about. Not only the victim people, everybody's a victim people, actually, whether you seem innocent or whether you're running the nuclear plants or the GMO factories or the vaccine companies and convincing everybody that vaccines for one-day-old babies are safe. All of you are, parts of our family, and I'm here to suggest that we all heal each other. And this is like some kind of a message in a bottle to you guys. And if it's meant to be seen by anybody or heard by anybody, it will be. If it's supposed to sit on the beach for 1,000 years and nobody find it, then that's what's going to happen. But I am talking to you if this is ever found. And no matter what you've done, that you're just as known, and just like anybody else, you're loved the same way, to the same degree, with no difference. All of the rest is just illusion. And I would say, if you are brave enough, consider it. Consider what we're talking about. Because if you change what your direction is now, then you'll help heal everything and yourself at the same time, and end up as one of the main, in a way, the main hero of this movie that we're all in. And if you think the dark force has you and that you can't get out and it's too powerful, that size and that power is completely fake. It's a complete illusion. I know how impressive it is. I know that some of these demonic beings are able to appear in forms. It's not imaginary. They're really there. But that's nothing. That's just a kid's show. And compared to the real power, it's not even noticeable. And I think David Icke was right. And he said something like infinite love is the only reality and everything else is illusion. That sounds, your mind wants to say, well, that's just a nice saying. No, I think that's literally true. And that the forbidden secret that is forbidden because it's like Mount Doom collapsing after they threw the ring in the lava, it's the demonic forces that are overwhelmingly terrifying everybody and so scary and so big. They don't have any reality. And they're just as lost and out of touch as anybody could be, and just as possible to heal. You're not supposed to know that. They're not supposed to know that. They think they're all lost forever, and that the only thing they can do is keep following the dark path and get the reward from the people that are their bosses. That's not true. They have another option, and they're not lost. And the result, if they're brave enough to look at it, would be all beauty. And I'm talking to everybody who's listening. So what will there be to fight about at that point? You just laugh. There's nothing to fight about. So this is going to happen. It's just a question of time, which is also part of the dream. And this is basically an invitation to heal that dream that we're all in, it might as well be real for now, even though it's temporary. And it's like you're the only person I'm talking to. There's nobody else in the audience. And it's 100% up to you. You're not supposed to know that, but I'm telling you, that's the reality. I don't care if you're the worst demonic being. Under your costume, you're no different than anybody. And you have the same choice. And you're just running around in a kid's play. So why not do something real? I mean, you can reject it and maybe think about it again in 1,000 years or whenever it comes up. But why not save yourself the discomfort and consider it now? So, yeah, I'm sorry to drag on so long. I hope I didn't put you all to sleep, but that's what I needed to share with you. And we'll take a call or two if anybody wants to talk. 657-383-1002. And hope you don't mind the noise in the background. We got a big thunderstorm going on. Actually just started. So we may get some interesting sound effects. In the meantime, let's see what's happening with Dee in California, who's been on hold for a while. And hi, Dee. How are you doing?
Hi, Richard. I'm doing really good this week.
Sure. Good. Nice to hear it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw what you sent in to us on email. Saturday's really busy for me getting ready for the show and stuff, so I will get to it.
Oh, no problem. I was considering putting it on the forum, but I wasn't sure yet if I was gonna.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I've been just having a great week, lots and lots of breakthroughs and levels. I drove my daughter to her test. She's in a paramedic accelerated course, and if she didn't pass this test, that was on Monday, she would owe all kinds of money and wouldn't be able to go forward with, her training for... Because she's an EMT, but she's going to be a paramedic. They don't get a big raise, but it's a little raise.
Okay.
So she did pass her test, and I felt like I passed mine too. Whatever tests universe was coming with, I always ask for stuff to come, and then when it comes, I'm like, oh, why did I ask?
Yeah, well, I have to tell her congratulations for us. That's great.
I will, yeah. She's happy. Now she's going to another level because now she's got to do what they call clinicals, where they actually do hands-on stuff in their education. And then they have a state test they have to pass after that. So she's not done yet, but she's through the biggest hump that's kind of like sorting out who's going to go on and who's not going to go on.
So did you say she's going to be a paramedic?
Yeah.
So she's going to go out to accidents and stuff like that and try to save people?
Yeah.
Wow. That's an intense job.
Yeah. She's already an EMT, which means they drive ambulance and they get woke up and all night long.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It is an intense job, and it doesn't pay that great all in all, but
she's going to get a little bit more at this point.
Yeah, and it's a bigger responsibility too. I mean, when you have people's lives in your hands. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. So I think that's a wonderful part of the whole medical system that I really support. Helps a lot of people.
The problem is they're trained in drugs, so that, they have to do what they have to do, but that's the way
right. Eventually they'll find out how to do emergency medicine with natural materials.
That would be exciting.
There are some doctors working on that now. There's one in Brazil. I forget his name at the moment. Maybe I'll think of it. But
Dr. Circus?
Circus, right. I've communicated with him before, and he's come up with a whole system of what he calls natural emergency medicine. And not sure how comprehensive it is, but he's got a lot of things that he's figured out ways to do them without drugs, even in trauma cases.
Nice.
So, maybe some of that will get better known.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's levels for everything, and she's going to the next level, and I've been paralleling her.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
I feel like somehow our educations are getting connected, and I'm going through different levels myself of my education with my learning on how to be in harmony, like what you were talking about with the peace and the love and the harmony.
Yeah, yeah. So did you get through your tests this week all right while she was doing that?
Yeah, we both did. It was great.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good. I feel like I've gotten to, I made it a point to, like what you said was, don't get complacent and look forward to the next level. So I did that this week, and I was looking forward to it. So I was that helped me look for it instead of being surprised or taken by surprise. So, so I was able to just leap on board with it and go with it, and it was like, wow. I don't know if I skipped a grade or what. It was maybe 2 grades in 1 week. I don't know.
You know, when that happens, sometimes you start feeling a higher voltage in your body.
Yeah.
And start trying to adapt to a new normal energy level. It's a hard thing to express, but it definitely happens. And it keeps stepping up as soon as you're ready.
It's neat. I am adjusting, and I think the main things that have been coming across that have helped me to adjust is that I can turn it into anything I want to turn it into. So I don't have to just automatically fall into assuming that it's going to harm me. I can look at it and say, oh, well, I guess it might be a good thing after all.
Yeah. No, it's the healing energy. It's just, we've only had little tiny bits of feeling of it so far. It's something a lot bigger. So it gets exciting.
Well, yeah, you keep saying we need to figure out who we are because it's already there. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on, is figuring out what's already there that I can tap into. And so that's exciting.
Yeah. All the different old sayings of if you ask for something, it's given. And if you try to get some door open to you, that it gets opened. And it's all whether the intent is really there on your part. So if you keep having in your feelings that you want to know something, then eventually in some way it gets shown to you.
Yeah, I ask questions and they get answered.
Yeah, exactly. The source is right immediately there with everybody. So people think they've got to convince the source to tell them the answer. The source is ready to tell all the answers immediately. So it's like with the healing, all you have to do is figure out where you're blocking it and stop.
Right.
And it just rushes in.
Yeah, I've been doing that where now that I see that I'm in control, not my mind, I'm able to do that much more effectively.
Exactly.
So it's been, I think I had to go through whatever I had to go through last week just because it helped me remember that if a thought comes in my mind, it's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. I don't have to attach myself.
Isn't that weird? Because most of the people would say, "Oh, that's so insulting. You're telling me my own thoughts are not mine." And no, it's because they're not yours. and it's just, if you get brave enough to consider that possibility, then immediately say, "Well, wait a minute. If those are not my thoughts and they're not my emotions and they're being projected, and you take those away, what's left?" And that's what starts getting exciting, because what's left is way better.
Yeah, and so that makes it so I don't have to feel guilty about thoughts that I look at them really quickly, and I see them, and I go, well, that one, I don't want that. I'm not going to attach to that.
It's just old habits of playing certain programs by the mind. It's just a 2-year-old like playing with an Xbox or something. It's been used to playing a program of this horrible fight or somebody being murdered or some hideous thing. It has nothing to do with you.
Right. Well, I took a walk to watch the moonlight, and I walked down my road, and this lady, like 2 houses down the street, she glyphosates her whole yard, so there's nothing alive. It's just dead. This is another neighbor, not the ones I used to talk about that are right near me.
Yeah.
She's like 2 houses down. But I immediately thought about her when I was walking past her house, like, oh, doesn't she know? You know, the thought popped in my head.
Yeah.
Like, she's an undesirable neighbor is the first thought. Like, I wouldn't want, because the house next door was for sale even farther down. I thought, who'd want to live next door to her, because she glyphosates her yard, and nobody wants to live next to that. And, you know, these thoughts started coming in, and then all of a sudden I was just strolling along, relaxed, and I thought, wait a minute, those aren't healthy thoughts. She's just a person that doesn't know any better, you know. So I just immediately rejected those thoughts and decided to love her, you know, and even send her love right there on the spot, because I hadn't thought of sending her love before for some reason.
Yeah, so I mean, that's incredible. You're practicing what's going to end up changing the bigger picture a lot, and in fact, it already is. Yeah,
and now, then I even got a even neater revelation just out of going through that whole little scenario, which was that I'm the matriarch of my whole neighborhood. So it's not just...
Yeah.
It's not even just the immediate...
True.
Yeah, it's not just...
And if there's anybody that gets to a point beyond where you are, then it's overjoyed that you get to meet them. You know, but if not, then it's all between you and the higher benevolent beings that are helping you.
And they are, because what's happened is a bunch of people are knocking on my door.
Yeah, exactly. I told you they would find you even if you don't come out ever. They'll still show up.
And they want me to, and it's usually, you know, something I can deal with. It's health problems, and they're usually open to my suggestions, which is really blowing me away. It's like, really?
Yeah, exactly. It's because of where your attention is. You know, people talk about cell towers being able to affect a radius of, I don't know, so many thousand feet and everything, but the frequency that you generate is so far beyond that, it has no distance limitations at all. It doesn't decrease, you know, like electromagnetic radiation in general decreases with the square of the distance. That's how they talk about it mathematically. But the radiation that comes out of you positively doesn't decrease. So there is no distance limitation at all. Everybody can feel it with full effectiveness everywhere. It just keeps getting more interesting. Yeah.
It is very interesting, because I realize that I am the person behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly right. much more interesting than the Wizard of Oz.
It is. It's not.
He was behind the curtain as a fake, you know, but you're behind the curtain as real.
Yeah. It's not somebody else pulling my strings. It's me pulling my strings.
Exactly. You're not supposed to realize that, but that's true. Because if you ever realize it, you can start using it for these wonderful purposes, which is exactly the same thing that nourishes you anyway.
Yeah, it's been nourishing me.
Yeah, that's very encouraging to hear about. I like that. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter how many people hear about or do this, as long as someone does. And if there's some, I don't know what the number is, but there's some small critical number on this planet that if they will do the work and practice as long as it takes on themselves in their own little environment, they will just like these people knock on your door right now, the people that are learning those things, they get to a certain point and they will find each other and start working in harmony. And then the target, like your neighbor that you send the good energy to, will be the atmosphere. And even now, we still have a chance to do that.
Yeah. Well, I have a question about, you were talking about the Earth's core energy, because now that I'm doing the Ho'oponopono, well, I'm mixing the Ho'oponopono with the power that's coming through from not blocking the flow.
Yeah.
And so I'm mixing those together to get more power into the Ho'opono to direct it to people. But I also wanted to direct it to the whole Earth to help save everybody. And so what you said was that to heal Earth's core energy besides the atmosphere. So
I was talking about the atmospheric energy that's around the Earth.
Okay.
It's like every living body, which in spite of the United Nations nonsense includes the Earth, is surrounded by a living energy field. And that's connected to the physical and mental and other levels of energy that flows through that being. So, one of the things that the negative power structure has been doing for a long time is to try to kind of negatively terraform the energy in the Earth's atmosphere so that people have negative thoughts and warring type thoughts and murderous thoughts and things like that. They've been working on that. And they're programming the Earth's atmosphere like a crystal. And it's affecting everybody's minds in a negative way. So in the 1950s, when I was a kid, and I would ride my bike 5 miles to the community swimming pool, and it was fine. My parents didn't worry about it. I did that by myself. But nobody was thinking thoughts of, doing the things to kids that they are now. And the reason that they weren't is the atmosphere was healthier physically. And now those thoughts are programmed into the atmosphere, and we can do the opposite, not only get rid of them, but replace them with automatically inspiring, uplifting thoughts that will, if we do it well enough, they're going to make even people that are serving the darker energies start to have thoughts that they don't know where they're coming from. It's like now if you have some kind of a spontaneous negative thought and it's kind of distressing, just imagine somebody trying to go out and sell a deadly vaccine to the public that knows what they're doing. And they got a spontaneous thought that they want to save people from having to have these injections, and they get really distressed and don't know where it's coming from, and then more and more come, and they start thinking, wow, maybe I should change my whole program here. We can start that chain reaction happening.
So would I send out, in that example, would I send out energy that's saying there's better ways than vaccines? I mean, how would I send that out?
No, if you just transmit that energy of harmony, that same one that heals your body, and let it heal on a larger scale, it will find the thing to heal. So, in other words, you can specify or not specify, but it's much more powerful if you don't. So if you just say allowing the energy of harmony into any situation finds the best way to heal it. And you don't even have to figure out what that is.
Because there's subconscious involved, which is smarter than anybody. Right?
Yeah, to the mind it's all conscious. To us it's not.
Okay, but we're dealing with us.
Yeah, but that energy that comes from the source doesn't pass through mind on the way to us. It's direct.
Right.
So if you just let it come and do as much as it will, then it'll do the best thing without you having to figure out what that is.
Okay, so I'm the middle person. I'm the amplifier for it, right? Or is that correct?
Yeah, you're just like a relay station.
Okay.
You don't have to originate anything.
Okay. Well, so do you think it's still good that I'm trying to mix it with Ho'oponopono?
Sure. Yeah, because all you're doing there is, that's general statements of, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, and heal, and thank you. And what's behind that is you're letting in the harmonic energy that takes care of everything. You don't have to decide exactly how the healing will take place. Just watch.
Oh. Okay. Well, I was wondering my part in the play of life, and then the thought came to me that felt pretty good, that was saying, well, how when you're caring for somebody, say I'm what do you call that? If I'm a caretaker or a guardian is what I wanted to say. Mm-hmm. If I'm a guardian for somebody's estate or for the people involved in it, then I would be watching over them and keeping everything going how it should go and keeping everything safe. So I'm looking at myself as being a guardian for the harmony of the planet, and in doing so, I started thinking about contracts. Like usually a guardianship would include certain duties that the person would have assigned or, take on willingly, like doling out money for a trust estate or making sure that, it goes to whatever resources they need gets to them so that they can grow and learn. And so that would be more like a teacher position as a trustee. And so I was trying to imagine that I would be as a trustee, but then I realized that I'm really the beneficiary too. I'm like, I get to be the one to get all the benefit of the love that I'm projecting. Yeah,
that's true. It's kind of I don't know what word I'm looking for. It's like you get to be both ends of the transaction and also nothing. Because if you're just deciding to be open to this energy and healing coming through you, then you're enjoying it, but you're not really doing anything. And yet you end up being the whole process. It may not even fit in words very well.
Right.
It's a good experience.
So I'm not, but I am.
And you feel what it feels like to the person being healed, too.
Okay, so I'm not using effort, but I am using allowance of...
Yeah, your intent is allowance for this full energy from the source, or whatever you want to call it, God or anything like that, to just come through you to just go out freely to all the people that need it. And so amplifying it is like the synergism where it multiplies. It doesn't just add, it multiplies into more and more, stronger and stronger, and it's really out there strong. Yeah, it'll keep going depending on how much you relax and allow it to. That's funny. The more you relax, the stronger it gets. Yeah, exactly. It's the stress and effort that cut it back. Wow. I'm learning how to focus because I think the key for me was that I'm finally understanding that the goal is doable. I mean, down deep, really, really believing and understanding. Not as an unknown belief, but as I can see it clearly as me being a part of it kind of a experience. Yeah. Once it happens, it kind of supersedes the belief level. Right. Well, I know for a fact that whatever I'm doing to not hinder the love is actually doing something. So I know it's doing something. Yeah. So that's changing my focus. It's
It's making my focus easier to stay connected.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because in the end, when you manage to do the whole thing, the effort is over.
And I probably will, go to another level and skin my knee or something, but...
Yeah, that's okay. It's just, the steps just keep getting better. So it's really simple in a way. I mean, there's very little to say. It's just that when a number of us get into doing that, we're going to get in touch with everybody around the planet who's doing a similar thing, not in a ceremony or ritualistic way, but unknown to anyone around them. And all of us will be aware of each other, and something could really change in the overall energy of the planet. Nice. It's building toward that now. Personally, my preference is that it happens soon. So we're just doing what we can.
Right. Well, so if I tie my body healing efforts, like just by relaxing and realizing that my immune system is balancing with my gut as I am developing these better habits as far as my eating and cleansing and taking care of my probiotics, then that's going to automatically help my immune system to relax, and then my whole body's going to heal.
Yeah, if you just be aware of the healing energy flowing through your own body, it's very powerful. That actually opens it up more, just your being aware of it.
So that the probiotics will be able to have a lot more freedom to do their stuff, basically?
Yeah, every one of those so-called probiotics is alive and conscious. And they feel that energy of your attention immediately.
Okay.
So it energizes what they're already doing.
Neat. Energized.
The medical people have a really kind of basic fundamental idea that the mind might affect the body, and that cancer patients and things should learn positive thinking, but that's about as far as they've taken it. They don't realize that every minute detail of your intent every second is consciously picked up by all the individual cells in your body, and they react, and they get either discouraged or encouraged by what you're letting come through.
Wow. So every cell could be encouraged.
Yeah, every cell is listening all the time. And we're not supposed to even think of them as very much alive. The basic biology idea right now is that they're kind of like things, but they don't matter, and they're certainly not self-aware, because even animals aren't self-aware. Only humans are the brilliant conscious life force on the planet, right? And there's no suspicion of this vast universe of conscious beings that are living as part of your own body. But they're still there.
Okay. On the Earth atmosphere, is that the aura? Are you talking about aura? And would that react the same way?
Well, the aura is a little piece of it, but the actual whole energy field is much bigger. It's got all these geometric shapes in it, and it extends out a lot farther. Every living being has some kind of little energy field that can be picked up close to the surface, what they call auras, but the full energy field is way, way bigger. And we don't have to know all the details until we end up seeing it eventually. But for now, all we have to do is have the intent to have this very powerful, positive healing energy flow into it. And there's no limit to quantity. I mean, we have this deep-seated idea that we're very limited because we're just this one little being. But that's not really the case. There's no limit to it. So healing one planet is nothing.
Well, I was picturing it, visualizing it as, you know what a pearl looks like? It's just a round ball, but it has a hole through in the middle.
Yeah, if it's made into jewelry, right.
Right, so I was imagining that it had a hole in the middle and that the energy was flowing up through the hole and out around the whole planet. So if the whole planet was almost see-through or translucent, you could see the energy going in a direction up and around, and back through.
Yeah,
and just keep moving.
It's definitely moving like that. I don't know about the whole, but it would be like if your vision was really clear enough to see it, it would be like the planet was much bigger than the physical level of it, and it would have all these incredible scintillating, changing colors happening through it all the time, and that energy field, that living energy field, is a target of the negative power structure, but they don't have anywhere near the available energy that you do.
Well, couldn't I just paint it with really beautiful colors that are real crystally?
You want to let it have its own color, whatever the natural part is. But,
okay.
But having that energy flow in to make it healthy and rejuvenated and healed, and then watch it, to see what color you see, I think could be really interesting.
Okay. I will do that. I mean, I like to watch the sunset and see all the colors that come out of that. And
yeah. Now, one kind of subtle point is that even though you're not telling it what color to be, you can project colors that have healing energy in them. People do that frequently with gold and silver and white and things like that, in your mind's intention, kind of. But if you don't restrict it and tell it what color it has to be, it can actually do much more.
Okay, but I could put in little suggestions of things that come to me.
All of the good energy that you feel in whatever color you're projecting is fine. It's got a nice effect on people, animals, plants, planets, anything.
Just don't limit it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, let it develop in whatever way that it wants to.
Okay. Sounds good. I've been also got a thing coming, I wasn't really planning it, but it just information started coming in as hieroglyphs. It was very strange at night, just coming in these little thoughts that I wanted to put into maybe a reminder list for myself, ended up attaching their own symbols to themselves. It was very strange.
Yeah. As long as you don't try to interpret them, you'll be able to know what they mean.
Well, they were coming with the words. It was...
Oh, okay. Okay, so you had the translation right there.
Yeah, it's like a little instruction book on what
neat.
Well, I was, asking for guidance for how to do the Bill... the guy that was doing the spinning it really fast through the subconscious with the symbols. Well, I had asked for input on how to do that, and that's kind of what came, was just a bunch of hieroglyphic-looking little symbols that I can relate to certain, I guess they're words, but they're really feelings that I was describing as words.
What's happening is you're getting rid of your subconscious beliefs that none of this is possible. And as soon as that's out of the way, then it can all happen without a problem.
Nice.
Our beliefs are usually pretty strong, and we think everything that we don't know about and have accepted intellectually is not only impossible, but probably evil. And so, we're just allowed to not know about any of those things. But once you get brave and you realize that whatever is real, God or the source or the real teacher there, is not threatened, the really wonderful reality is going to be true whether anybody believes in it or not. And then you start being more relaxed and not blocking these things. And as soon as you stop blocking, the most amazing stuff starts happening, which is really neat. We're just at the very beginning stages. I mean, it's going to get good.
That's what's happening. I think I'm learning how to not block it, and I'm also not entertaining the programs that are old.
Right. Or at least you recognize they're programs and they're not yours.
Right, and then I can just put them in the mental shredder and say, you're out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and give your mind lots of other fun things to do instead.
Yeah, I have to, or else they'll try to resurrect themselves.
Yeah, because it doesn't want it. It's a constant babysitting job, so might as well just, make it fun.
Well, what's neat about it is by taking on that job and making it fun, it's actually causing me to be able to constantly keep my focus where it needs to be, which I wasn't able to do before.
Yeah. The side effect of taking the responsibility and not resisting what you have to do with your mind is that it keeps you with a really great focus all the time.
Right, and that is like the whole key to being able to make progress is keeping the focus. So it's really neat. So thank you for the information to learn how to do that. I've been very, very appreciative and understanding how to tune in better. It's all coming around much better. So looking forward to the next level.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's a wonderful service to me because by having the privilege to share this stuff, then I get to listen at the same time as we're talking, and I realize this, we've had people talk about the homework. It gives me constant homework to do so that I make sure that there's nothing I'm saying that I'm just talking about, that I have to actually be doing it all the time too. So, I feel extremely benefited by even getting to look at any of this stuff.
That's great. Well, we can all do it together then, and I'm starting to see truth pop out too, like things that I didn't know were true or not are starting to really be exposed. The masks are falling off of the beliefs, and so I feel like I'm shedding off, sloughing off the old and making room for these better ones.
That makes you feel lighter as it happens. It's really neat, and it affects your physical health and everything.
Yeah, that's the really important part.
You realize after a while that you relax because whatever is true is never going away. You don't have to worry about that you were holding it up because it's the opposite. It's been holding us up.
Right, and like what you said, it's already all there. We just have to rediscover what it is by kind of scraping off the rust, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm starting to catch on to it. It's like, why? That's so obvious. Why didn't I get that before?
Yeah, everything ends up like that. It was all the real stuff ends up being simple and obvious, and we never saw it.
Right. Well, I think getting the body cleansed was a huge, huge, huge part of it for me. I mean, I still have a ways to go, but I'm getting there.
It's not impossible if your body's really toxic, but it's much harder. You almost need a huge background to overcome that. It's way easier and more natural if you can get cleaned out internally first.
Right. Yeah. I have had mercury and lead and aluminum and all kinds of metals type issues, and now that I'm getting my mind more clear, it's assisting my body. So, I was concentrating on my mind a lot, but the way my body, I kept just sort of shoving my body as the silent little sibling that kind of followed mind around, but now it's coming out of its corner, and it's saying, now that mind is, I actually give mind the assignment to help its little sister body or whatever I want to call it out of just its doldrums, and so mind has to be a big sister babysitter to body, and body's going, well, now that I got mind and I'm all happy tagging along with mind's showing me stuff, and mind is showing me that those metals that I thought were stuck in me, they're not stuck in there anymore, so I get to let them go.
Yeah, exactly. Having the two kids is really good. I mean, they can help each other once they get some good habits.
Yeah, and when they're interacting together, it's not such a drain on me.
Exactly, yeah. And that's it's perfect. It's like animals that don't like to be the only one in the pack.
Right.
It makes them feel much better.
So now that I've got body thinking that, well, mind's helping body think that it doesn't have to hold on to the metals. They can actually be neutralized back into dust. They don't have to be toxic anymore. Then
right. I mean, they're really just the physical manifestation of frequencies. So they don't even really tend to hang around when the energy changes.
So they don't have to be so dense. They can get knocked apart and move out.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, your mind is right that they've been held on to as a belief. We have so many beliefs we don't know about. And the belief was that you were not going to be able to get rid of those. So it was true.
Right. All right. Well, I'm excited about all the revelations that are coming my way, and so thank you.
Yeah, we need to see what happens this next week. And, I'll send you an answer on the email as soon as I get to it too.
Okay, no rush. Yeah, it was kind of long. I threw it together last night. Well, it came to me the day before, but yeah, it's very interesting and empowering for me. It was just sort of a realization of the views that I grew up thinking of were actually a cross-wiring between brain and heart, and I'm straightening that out. So maybe I'll put it on the forum. I don't know. I'll see what you think.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you some feedback.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good rest of the weekend.
You too.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Later.
Okay, guys. We had one or two calls that we lost, but if you guys want to call back, you've still got a little time. Otherwise, we're going to hang it up early. Anybody that still wants to call in, 657-383-1002. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to mention to you. Just for new listeners or people that don't remember, we have both of our sites, LostArtsRadio.com and LostArtsResearchInstitute.org, which is the site of the larger project and the nonprofit that we've started that will own and run the school if we find a safe and clean and no strings attached source of adequate funding for it. And money on the smaller level we use to just keep ourselves going right now because we're working, a lot, and there's no money being generated by the work, but it has to be done. And every time I start thinking, oh, we must not be reaching anybody out there, somebody writes and says, please keep going. And so we are. And the Sunday shows are, of course, still going on. We've got a really interesting one coming up tomorrow that I didn't mention to you, I don't think. And those shows are designed to be like installments in a school program. So we've had Tom DeWeese on the show a lot over the last couple of years or so. He's one of the world chief experts on Agenda 21, and he'll be back in August. But I found out he's got this brilliant vice president in American Policy Center, which is a company that he founded, to talk about freedom and Agenda 21, the United Nations, and solutions that people can do in their communities and things like that. So I wanted somebody to come on the Sunday show, which is our school education show, and talk about the basics and the mechanisms and how Agenda 21 actually works, how this relates to private property, what's happening in local communities, and how it can be turned around. And so that lady's name is Kathleen Marquardt. She's done a lot of writing for both Tom's site, which is AmericanPolicy.org, and for News with Views, which is a site started by a friend of ours, Paul Walter. I think he's in Montana. I'm not absolutely positive about that. Really good guy that I've talked to quite a bit. And Kathleen Marquardt, Marquardt, has written some great articles on there. One of the ones that I read was an 8-part series on Agenda 21. And I thought maybe she'd be willing to come on Lost Arts Radio and give us a kind of an introductory class on how that all works. And she said, sure. So she will be on the show tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. And wanted to make sure and remind you about that. The school site, you'll be able to see the larger project that we're trying to do. But even to keep us going right now on the smaller scale, anybody that has the resources and wants to donate financially is really invited to do that. We could use it. And there are donate buttons, and there's also a physical address to mail funds to if you don't want to share a percentage with PayPal, which is not a big percentage, but they take a little bit. And I guess the project that's described on the research, Lost Arts Research Institute.org site is beyond the school. It's what we're going to try to do, even if the school never happens. So you can read a little bit of it on that site. We've also got Doug's Diamond Report, which he's writing periodically on the LostArtsRadio.com site, as well as a playlist that he put up there that is the Alex Jones News Show that I continue to think is really a spectacular resource and very valuable. And I know there's a lot of people that hate Alex Jones, but I don't think it's justified. I've been watching his work for 17 years in great detail. I've talked to him several times. And I think he's a sincere person. I'm really watching his consciousness grow, and he's doing a great job. If it wasn't for the work of Alex Jones, we'd have a different president right now in the U.S. and no doubt have gotten into World War III last January. So I think it's better that it's going the way it is, although because it's going the way it is, there is actually a program in progress right now to discredit and then kill the current president of the United States. And the reason is not that he knows all about the things that we talk about on this show. He's obviously got big blind spots on certain environmental issues. He doesn't know that chemical agriculture is a complete unmitigated disaster. It's not saving the world. The chemical fertilizers, as we've said before, are the reason for the apparent need for pesticides. GMOs are a whole other world, and they're just total disaster. They've been shown to end reproductive ability in hamsters in 3 generations completely, and to cause all kinds of cancer in test animals, which really shouldn't be necessary. I mean, if you're awake at all, you know that GMOs should never be produced on the planet. And there's a lot of that stuff and the chemtrails and the nuclear power and stuff that I don't think Donald Trump knows about. But the reason that I would say he's probably the greatest president maybe that we've ever had in this country is not his brilliant knowledge of all those things. He's still, unaware of some of it, but his intent and his attitude, he's given up an incredibly comfortable life and a lot of his money, put his family at risk, and subjected himself to 24-hour-a-day ridicule from the media, the New York Times and others funding a play about killing him over and over and over in Central Park. I mean, the media saying that he's doing this for his own ego is totally ridiculous, and the fact that anybody falls for that shows that we're pretty far gone into unconsciousness. But there are plans afoot right now to destroy and kill him physically. And the work that we do here on the normal educational level and what you all can do if you want to do the deeper work on your health and consciousness is a direct way to help anything good that's happening, including what he's trying to do. And I would, in spite of being called, on some other shows or by other people completely, a terrible person for supporting him, I'm completely in support of what he's trying to do so far in his attitude. And I think that whatever mistakes are being made there, the intent is to really help the country and, by example, the world. And I would like to have all of our representatives on local, state, and federal level be like that. But I think our main service is the one that we've been talking about. And if you're brave enough to do that, the work is internal. And it's not in critiquing other people or attacking people that don't appreciate that you're right and they're wrong or anything like that. It's what you're really doing inside yourself. And the point of this show is to remind you about that, not in a way of criticizing you at all, because we all fall into the same traps constantly, but encouraging you and giving you practical tools that can actually be used to change. There aren't adequate words for it. I just have to call it consciousness. It's not some kind of a new agey fantasy idea. It's real, and it's forgotten. It's probably the biggest forbidden taboo that I know of as far as the top of the power structure is concerned. You're not supposed to know what your real potential is, and that's why they're doing in a race to do everything they can to shut us down, keep us addicted to medical drugs, make us feel helpless, poor if possible. That's why they want to have the Federal Reserve raise interest rates enough to kill the economic recovery. Right now they're planning to do that and ruin the environment, poison the food, all that kind of not very friendly stuff. Is because they want you to not become aware of who you actually are and what you could actually do. Because the secret is that you're the unknown hero of this movie. It's not somebody else. It's you. And as Dr. Len demonstrated in the Hawaii hospital experiment, one person has this vast ability of healing on the outside by what they do internally. And if he had combined that with some of the other things that we're talking about, where you can reverse the aging process on your body and get rid of the so-called diseases that are bothering you and stop worrying about infectious disease and degeneration and not be subject to that anymore, which is absolutely possible. And it's already been shown and proven and demonstrated, and you're just not supposed to know about it. So my idea is that if we combine these things, get rid of the physical issues and then do the inside work, that we can make a massive impact on the outside world. And I'm inviting you to do that. And if you have any feedback on that, when I was starting this and gradually getting into it and realizing that would be the message, I didn't know if anybody would relate to it. And if you guys just would think that it's all completely crazy and deluded and, unrealistic. But every time I start thinking that and that we're wasting our time putting out this message, I get emails mostly from people that I don't know who are listening to the archives and treating it like a podcast and not being able to call in live because of their schedules conflicting with the live show times, especially in certain countries. And they're saying, no, our lives have been completely transformed. We stopped complaining or critiquing what you're saying and are actually doing it. And it's changing our lives completely. So we're still here. And as long as that seems to be the case, as long as they don't knock us off air completely, we're going to continue and try to give you the most valuable internal tools to break through the secrecy on all this stuff that we can possibly share with you. So I appreciate your being here. Thanks for putting up with the long session of talking today. I know that we lost a couple of people. I hope you'll call back next week and see what you can do with some of these usable tools during the week and let us know. And good luck with everything that's happening in your life. We'll talk to you next time.